Was Raja Raja Chola a Hindu king? This question now finds itself in the midst of a raging political storm. And I'm joined on the news track, live and exclusive from London by Amish Tripathi, director of the Nehru Centre in London, author of 9 books, Shiva Trilogy, Ramchandra series. In fact, his latest book, Lanka, just reached my house yesterday, which is when I said I must reach out to Amish and speak to him about this raging controversy about the Chola dynasty and whether or not they are Hindus. Now, here's the context. You've got the likes of national award-winning Tamil director Vetrimaran saying that Raja Raja Cholan wasn't a Hindu king. And the reason he says this is that there was nothing defined as Hinduism or Hindu back in the 10th century AD, which is when the Chola dynasty ruled. He's saying there's Shaivite sect, there's Vaishnavite, but there is nothing called Hinduism or Hindu at the time of the Chola dynasty, and therefore a regional identity is being lost and a religious identity is being forced fit. Amish, what do you make of this raging controversy about whether or not the Chola dynasty would constitute as Hindu kings?
Look, I guess if the point is that the term Hinduism was invented by the British, well, first one can fact check that actually, because the term Hindu emerged from the Persians actually, because in the Persian and the ancient Persian language there is no sound for sir, so they would call those to the east of Sindhu as Hindu. And secondly, if one can quote Shakespeare, because Shakespeare tends to work with certain kinds of people, if one can quote Shakespeare, what's in a name? A rose by any other name still smells as it would. And the term Hinduism may be new. That doesn't mean that the set of philosophies which defined Hinduism did not exist. I'm sure your viewers will be very interested in knowing that even the term Christianity did not emerge, I think, till at least the 2nd, 3rd century, because the term Christianity came from the Greek word for Messiah, Christos, which gave rise to the term Jesus Christ. Even the name Jesus is actually the Hellenization of the Hebrew name Joshua. So if you say that the name Christianity emerged, some 200 years after Jesus Christ, then can you say that Christianity didn't exist? That Saint Peter and Saint Paul weren't Christian? That would not be a logical argument, right? I mean, the Christian religion was called, the Christians were called Nazarenes in those days. So just the fact that the name itself didn't exist does not mean that the body of philosophies did not exist. And lastly, I would like to say, that the Cholas were very proud Shaivites. They built among the greatest temples for Lord Shiva. There are enough records of them having worshipped at Chidambaramji. And I'm a Shaivite, and I would be a little surprised if someone told me that I, as a Shaivite, am not a Hindu. I would honestly be a little surprised.
No, but here's the crux of the argument. The allegation that Thiruvallur is being saffronized, the fact that you've got at that time concepts of Vainavam, Shivam, Samanam, now being put over a Hindu identity, that a regional identity is being lost. The argument is that present them as the greatest South Indian dynasty rather than as a Hindu dynasty, because that's not how a lot of people would like to remember or see the Chola dynasty.
One of the beauties of the Indian way is that we don't say that there is only one truth, and that if you don't follow that one truth, everyone else is false and they will burn in hell for eternity. You can have multiple identities. My family, my father's family is from UP, so technically you can call me a UPite. My mother's family is from MP, technically you can call me an MPite. I was born in Mumbai, I live in Mumbai, so you can call me a Maharashtrian. I've studied in Tamil Nadu. I read Ponniyin Selvan before it was fashionable to do so. I'm outside of Tamil Nadu, because I had studied in Tamil Nadu, so I'd heard of it at that time, and I read the books in those times. You can call me someone who loves Tamil culture as well, and I can still speak some Tamil, by the way. The beauty of the Indian way is you can have multiple identities. I can be an Indian, I can be a Hindu, I can be a Maharashtrian, I can be a UPite, I can
No,
be
but the
so many things
counter
at
to
the
that
same
is,
time.
which again is a controversy raging in the context of the trailer of the film Adipurush, where you've got Saif Ali Khan depicted a certain way as Ravan. People don't like the way Ravan is depicted, they don't like the way Hanuman is depicted. So if religion can indeed be interpreted in different ways, as you're suggesting, then that's a bit of a specious argument, because you've got one serial that people grew up seeing, so they see or imagine Ravan or Hanuman a certain way, and now they're trying to superimpose that vision of Ravan and Hanuman onto Adipurush.
There are multiple interpretations. A. B. Just because a name didn't exist doesn't mean that the body of philosophies which comprise Dharma didn't exist earlier. And C. That in our Indian way, because we have comfort with multiple truths, you can have multiple identities. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I mean, let me give an example of Rajendra Chola. When he conquered land, the Indian subcontinent up to Bengal, he took on the name Gangaikonda. And it has been recorded that it was an emotional moment for him. Gangaikonda essentially means the one who brought the waters of the Ganga, back to his land, because he carried pictures of the water of Gangaji to his capital. He wouldn't have done that if it wasn't a cultural and emotional moment for him, right?
No, sure. But this other charge that's being leveled about, a lot of caste dynasties starting at the time of Raja Raja Cholan. We've seen people come out, for example, film director Ranjit alleging that land was possibly taken away from the Dalits. A lot of caste oppression began during the reign of Raja Raja Chola. A lot of young people who are watching, wondering whether that's true, not true. What are the historical facts in the way that you see them?
Among the things that one finds is that many of our great emperors were people actually across all castes. So the Marathas weren't, they are from backward caste. Mauryas were, well, at least if you project modern castes backwards, which I'm not so sure is fair to do. But if you do that backwards, then well, even the Mauryas were not, were backward castes. So there were people of multiple castes, and this has been recorded in various texts, and including in Dr. Ambedkar's, who were the Shudras. So there were rulers across different castes, and some may see Ravan as a hero, but well, Ravan was a Brahmin then. If you want to project caste backwards.
Let's spend a moment on Ravan, the subject of your new book, Lanka. Now, here's the controversy at this moment, which is to do with the manifestation, the physical interpretation of Ravan. How do you see this? This idea that as a Brahmin scholar, should he be portrayed as such? This idea that and how does the filmmaker make his film? Because God alone knows who will stand up and oppose the representation of Ravan and allege that this is someone who looks like Khilji.
Look, I mean, people can have multiple points of view, and if we are a free country, then you must, give the space for respectful discussions across all viewpoints. There is an interpretation that one has seen of Ravan in the Valmiki Ramayana, where in the original Valmiki Ramayana it was a more nuanced take. The relatively more recent versions of the Ramayana, had a more black and white approach. I think often what you find is that stories reflect the age in which they were written. So therefore, my books had a certain, interpretation, and I'm very lucky that it has been well received. And the interpretations differ with age. You see that across, So in the Ramcharitmanas, there was a different interpretation. In the Kritibhashi Ramayana, there was a different interpretation. Interestingly, in many of the Puranas, where Ravan is referred to as Dashanan, there are some different interpretations. and that is something that is part of the Indian way. Hari Ananta, Hari Katha Ananta, that doesn't just apply to, how we see our gods and goddesses, it applies to how we see all characters.
But as a
Different
culture and as a society, we seem to have been comfortable with different interpretations for a very long time. It's only now when we're seeing this boycott culture which demands a homogenization of each of these historical characters. That there is one interpretation and that is okay. There are so many Ramayans where Ravan is shown in good light. And therefore now when you see a boycott culture because Ravan looks a certain way or the Pushpak Viman looks a certain way, and that is objected to so much so that filmmakers have to scurry around trying to make justifications for what they did.
Firstly, I should clarify, I'm not so sure there was any version of the Ramayana where Ravan was shown completely in a good light.
Sure.
His faults were of course shown, and there are Ramayans where he was shown in a nuanced light. His strengths were shown, that he was of course extremely talented. He was knowledgeable of the Vedas. He composed the Tanda Stotra, which Shaivites to this day, including me, we chant. And it was a hymn composed by Ravan. But his bad points, or rather his weaknesses, were also shown, that he had no control over his ego, he had no control over his anger. And if there are some things that can be learned from Ravan, it is that how we should control our anger and ego. And as far as different viewpoints are concerned, I'll go back to the point that I made earlier, that India has had a tradition of multiple points of view. You have a right to put your point of view across. Someone has a right to disagree with that point of view, as long as debate takes place in a respectful manner without any violence, as happens in many countries, regrettably internationally. I think that's okay. You can have multiple points of view.
So let's come back to the Cholan dynasty for a moment, and this question that's being raised about whether the Cholas were the greatest Indian dynasty. When you compare with the Mauryas or the other famous Indian rulers, where in your ranking, where would the Cholan dynasty stand?
So I read multiple points of view, and if you go from that perspective, at least my submission is that the history books that have been taught to us have regrettably a Delhi obsession. And I'm not deriding the importance of Delhi. It's a very important city. But there were other important regions of India as well. And you find that empires which control Delhi have a lot of airtime in our history books. But other empires which were equally great, but if they did not control Delhi, they have been airbrushed out of our history books. And among them, are the Marathas, the Cholas, the Palas, the Hoysalas, Raja Bhoj of, there are so many like this, the Kakadiyas, the Rashtrakutas, the Pujars, so many have been airbrushed out of our history books, which is very unfortunate. Someone like, the Mughal Empire is a massive empire that obviously has to be covered in our history books. But should the Lodhis get more airtime than the Cholas? The Lodhis were glorified zamindars, frankly. And Rajan Chola's empire was nearly as big as Akbar, so probably bigger if you count all his Southeast Asian territories. So wouldn't it be fair to include all other regions of India as well? Secondly, I think that would also give us a deeper understanding of how of Indian history, because we are so Delhi focused. We think of our land as primarily an agrarian land which fought land battles, and invaders came from the northwest, because that's where the invaders to Delhi came from. But India was actually among the greatest seafaring nations on earth. We would know that if we covered empires outside of, that weren't centered around Delhi. Not just the Mauryas and Guptas, the Marathas, the Cholas, they all had, the Kalingas, they had great seafaring traditions. India was a natural hub for ancient trade routes, because we were the hub of the Indian Ocean, and the Indian Ocean is the only ocean on earth where the winds change direction like clockwork every year, which makes seafaring naturally easy in the pre-engine era. We would develop a deeper understanding of our own history if we didn't center everything around Delhi. That it's not just a decolonization that needs to be done on our history. The different regions of India also need fair airtime in our history books, and not just Delhi. Once again, I'm not deriding the importance of
Oh,
Delhi. It
sure,
is
no, of
very
course.
important. But there are other regions of India that are important as well, and they must be covered. And from that perspective, movies which cover the Marathas, movies which cover the Cholas, movies which cover the Kakadiyas, movies which cover Raja Bhoj, the Palas, these are very important. We need a more balanced view of our history.
You know, there have been so many movies, well-known, expensive movies on the Mughal dynasty, Mughal-e-Azam, Jodha Akbar, Taj Mahal, Humayun, Anarkali. Now we're seeing the likes of, say, a Punyam Selvam, a Raja Rajan Cholan, Ambikapati. How much of this do you think is cultural? How much of this is political? And how much of this is just part of a larger pushback against against Islam or against Muslims or against or as part of a larger Hindutva project?
I don't think it's an Islamic thing. I think it is actually about different regions of India. Think about the Adil Shahis. They were an Islamic empire. Have you heard of them at all? Right? Many don't know this. Think about the facts of history. For most of human history, India has always had a city in the top five cities in the world. And cities are the hub of innovation and economic enterprise. There was only one time in human history where we did not have a city among the top five. That was between 1600 to around 1800. When the British came, then again we started getting cities in that. Now, prior to 1600, Vijayanagar was the second most populous and the richest city on earth. When Vijayanagar was sacked, guess which city was among the top five Indian city, which was the richest? It was Bijapur, right? Which was an Adil Shahi city. Do you read about that in our history books? So I would submit that actually it's not about a Hindu-Muslim thing. It's our establishment historians, regrettably till now, have been obsessed with Delhi and have ignored other parts of India, which has led to a skewed understanding of our history. My submission is let the balance come in, and it's good that this balance is coming
No,
in.
it's a good pushback. It's a good pushback against a very Delhi-centric.
Again, I'm not. I will repeat once again. I'm not anti-Delhi. It is a very important region, but there are other parts of India as well. We must cover them as well, and it will lead to a deeper understanding of what India truly is.
Yeah, sure. And I watched Punyam Selvam over the weekend. It was a fascinating watch. It is true that it sheds light on aspects of our history which you don't spend as much time growing up reading about. And I think at least for the next generation, they will then have the opportunity to consume India's history
to read.
In all its glory.
I would encourage all of you, all your viewers to read Punyam Selvam. It's a series of books. I discovered it because I studied in Tamil Nadu in the 1980s. And so I discovered it out there and I read the translation of it. It is a classic. How many of us had read of it? I mean, outside of Maharashtra, because I'm in Maharashtra, I respect Chhatrapati Shivaji as one of the greatest Indian emperors. But how is he portrayed in history books outside of Maharashtra? It's so sad that someone like Chhatrapati Shivaji is referred to as a mountain rat in our history books, when actually he's one of the greatest Indian emperors ever. How many Indians know that in the modern age, the emperor who banned slavery for the first time, or the leader, was not Abraham Lincoln, it was actually Chhatrapati Shivaji? How many of us know this? And should these things be taught in our history books? All I'm asking for is some balance. And if it's not happening in our history books, if movie makers or authors are bringing about this balance, I would suggest it's a good thing.
Yeah, more power to them. Let there be different interpretations and versions and different shades of history that come out. Let's not try and homogenize all of our text as one idea of what, say, a Ravan should look like or Hanuman should look like. Let there be different interpretations as there have been in our culture, in our society, in our history from time immemorial. You have a packed calendar, so I won't hold you back any longer. I wish you all the best for your new book, and I look forward to reading it over the weekend. Amish Tripathi for joining us. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.